to the world. Subscribe now to the Hot 97 YouTube channel. It's Ebro in the Morning with Laura Stiles and Rosenberg.
Ebro in the Morning, Laura Stiles, Rosenberg. We're waiting on Ebro, but we're talking to Lin-Manuel Miranda about what we were talking about. Honestly, we were just telling old stories of the early days of Hamilton and all the different amazing people who showed up.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I was telling Lynn how Shawnee Culture and I went to go see Hamilton, and we were the only Latina and Black person around in the sea of white people.
Yeah, that's
a
problem.
But then we look up, and we were like, "Oh my God, is that Lauryn Hill?" And we freaked out, and we were like little kids waiting outside the bathroom until she came out just to make sure it was her. We didn't bother her, but we just wanted, to make sure we saw each other.
Lynn, what was your biggest geek out during the heyday of Hamilton with the celebrity showing up?
My biggest geek out was really early. It was when we were still at the Public off Broadway, and Busta was in the front row, and like Busta's top echelon for me when it comes to hip hop. And so I was like, if he doesn't like it, like I'm just gonna close the show.
So did you notice his face during the show? Like
he's in the front row, and the Newman was only 300 people. Like you could see.
Yeah, that's
everyone.
where I saw the show. Yeah.
And so I was like, don't look at Busta, don't look at Busta. And then I looked above him, and above him was Mandy Patinkin, who's like the Busta of musical theater.
Exactly.
So it was like from both worlds, I had sort of heroes literally stacked on top of each other in the audience. So that was really tricky. And then he got really vocal during the rap battles, and then I knew.
Oh, really?
Okay.
He was
like,
battles, oh!
Because he was like literally in the front row. So he'd go, wow. Damn.
And then you got him for the album too, right?
And then we got him for the album. He came and talked to us for an hour. He showed up a lot during the early days, and he did My Shot, which was my dream, because Hercules Mulligan, I was always writing in Busta's voice in my head. And so, yeah, that was the scariest and most fulfilling one, like in the early days.
You had to feel so good about the way hip-hop responded to it in general, because I always reference back to this, and not only because it makes me feel cool, but also because I think it's interesting. When you first rapped a bar of it to me and Cypher Sounds like 9 years ago, I remember you described it, and we're looking at each other like, this sounds like the corniest shit.
Yeah,
ever.
Schoolhouse rap.
Exactly, Schoolhouse rap. And then you did it, and everyone's taken aback by it, but to see that reverberate, not just from a couple of nerds like me and Cypher Sounds, but all the rapper, like you got nothing but love from all these legends. That must have meant so much, because as an artist and a hip-hop head.
Absolutely. And like, listen, I work in this really weird field called musical theater, but I all of my shows are a love letter to hip-hop, including In the Heights. And In the Heights just didn't, we didn't run long enough to land on anyone's radar. There's lots of hip hop in the Heights, but it just, it didn't get off the arts and leisure page in the same way that Hamilton did. And now, it's like crazy, but because now everyone just has it in their house. But yeah, I mean, that was because there's so many references and allusions to the artists I love, and it's really 90s hip-hop. Like, it's really, the Mobb Deeps and the Biggies.
The Mobb Deep is what hit me. Was it I'm only 19, but my mind is old?
I'm only 19, but my mind is old.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
And
then for them to do, like, a cover of Right Hand Man, and that was one of, it was like one of the last posthumous tracks Prodigy ever did, like, means the world to me.
So we were just talking about this. We're talking to Lin-Manuel Miranda, and Ebro will be here in moments. But there was a lot of controversy. Not a lot of controversy. There was a huge deal because Hamilton aired on Disney+. So finally the world, maybe who didn't get to see the show, got to see it. And it kind of shut down the world for a day, and everybody tuned in. I know the numbers were crazy. But then, not surprisingly, and I'm curious to if you anticipated this, the conversation started about, is this a time for us to be celebrating Alexander Hamilton and other forefathers? And you really seemed to jump in there and say, instead of fighting it, you said, I understand the conversation, I did the best I could, but take us through what that was like. Did you expect it? How did you feel, etc.?
Well, I mean, yeah. I think the tricky thing is the word celebrating, because I never felt like this celebrated them. I felt like if there's any thesis to the show is that, like, we're a really flawed country because we were created by really flawed people. And so I fit as much of that into the 46 songs that make up the show that I could. I know there's stuff I couldn't. And it took me 6 years to get the 2.5 hours you see, but I know what's missing from the frame because I had to I agonized over those decisions. And so to see those decisions sort of discussed, like why isn't Hamilton's complicity in slavery more discussed? Why aren't Native people discussed? Like that's all stuff I wrestled with. So in a way, they're conversations I had, and so it's all valid to me because I made the decisions I made. The show is what it is, but like, yes, it's worth talking about that. Like you can't talk about Black and brown folks playing the founders without that contradiction taking place. Like that's the contradiction and that's the conversation. So yeah, it's all good.
You have a new Hulu doc dropping on Friday. It's called We Are a Freestyle Love Supreme. Can you tell us what it's about?
Yeah, this is like, it's like our Muppet Babies, you know, in a lot of ways, the folks who were involved with the creation of Hamilton, both on stage and backstage, like Tommy and Chris Jackson and David, we all have been in this hip hop improv group. It's a comedy group where we, and Ebro has entered the chat.
Sorry, Ebro, we started. Jump on in.
Yeah. Good to see you.
So he's telling us about the new Hulu doc that's dropping. We Are Freestyle Love Supreme.
Nice. Hey, Lou.
Yeah.
How you doing,
Hey,
brother?
What's
You doing
up, man?
good,
Good to
Lynn?
see you. Yeah.
Wait,
doing
can
good.
you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you great. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, I can hear you fine. There's something popping up on my computer. Sorry, guys.
So
Go
what do
ahead.
you mean it's like Muppet Babies? So
Oh,
Yeah.
well, so we started the group around the same time I started working on In the Heights with my collaborators. That's 2003. And then we had our first like off-Broadway and Broadway run 2000. We have our first off-Broadway run 2004, and we've been together like 18 years. And it's the opposing
wow.
muscle group that sort of feeds into the writing of Heights and feeds into the writing of Hamilton, but like it has its own fan base, like because we just get up in front of people and we say, give us a word, and we just do this freestyle comedy show. And that's the most impermanent shit you could possibly do. Like we leave the stage and we don't remember what the hell our show was just about because we were just literally the whole show is off the dome. And so this guy, Andrew Freed, started filming us in 2005. Like when we had our first trip abroad, it was my first time away, farthest away from home without my family. I was still single. Like I hadn't even met my wife yet. And so he's been running cameras on us for 15 years. It's sort of like a hip hop boyhood. And this thing that is so impermanent now has this movie that's sort of about our friendships. There's sort of the way we come together and fall apart, the way Hamilton changed the dynamic in the group. Like it's sort of all of it.
Oh, so this has footage all the way back that predates. I didn't realize that.
2005,
footage-
bro.
Yeah, this has footage of us just like literally rapping to people in line for other shows trying to get an audience for our show, like me
that's
busking,
tight.
handing out flyers. So it really, that's what I mean by Muppet Babies. Like just no one knew who we were. There's a great shot where Tommy and I are walking through Times Square and he says, there's a good chance no one will ever know who you are.
Yo, does it ever dawn on you? Do you have moments where you're sort of like able to still see how crazy it is, how mainstream a star you've become considering you do musical theater? Like it's pretty bonkers.
It's really bonkers. With Hamilton, my biggest hope was like we'd get school groups and we'd run long enough to make our money back.
Right.
And it's so beyond that. It was funny. In the Heights the movie of In the Heights was supposed to come out this year, and it got kicked to next year. So
I was just about to bring that up because I'm so looking forward to watching that with my little girl.
It's so good, and Anthony Ramos is such a star. But it's funny because a lot of like pre-programmed publicity around the release just kind of came out anyway because people just kind of
The trailer's
got their
out.
stuff. The trailer's been out for half a year. But MTV released this interview with me in 2007, and I'm like walking through a bodega. Through like my local bodega, and I point at the ATM and I go, this is the best ATM because it releases $10 bills for when you have $17 in your bank account, which was very real to me in that moment.
Right.
So yes, I have daily humbling reminders of how far the journey has been. When that popped, I was like, oh yeah.
I remember the first day you came up here and interviewed with Angie Martinez, man, for In the Heights. And we all, as like a staff, I took my mom, back when that came out. Like, it was such a monumental moment for just the city, for one of its own to have a cultural musical that spoke to an area of the city. I think before In the Heights, the last time that happened was felt like West Side Story or something.
Yeah, I mean, I exist and I'm talking to you because I knew I wanted a life in musicals, and like I can't dance well enough to play friggin' Bernardo, and that's it. That's like all
Right.
we get is Puerto Rican dudes. So I started writing In the Heights because I just knew the roles didn't exist, and every time I write something, I'm trying to get us on the board in a big way, and In the Heights, I'll never make that leap. A leap that big again. Like I went from
You can't.
substitute teacher at my high school to Broadway
No,
composer.
no.
Yeah, you can't.
Well,
It's
and
impossible.
also now you've performed for the president. You've done everything. There's really, unless you perform on Mars, I don't know where you go.
Right. Angie was there. And Angie actually is the source of one of the conspiracy theories I would love to debunk, because
Okay.
I was so geeked at being at the White House, and I was talking to Angie. She was like, I can't believe we're here. I can't believe we perform. Like, I can't believe there's a spoken word thing happening at the White House. And I said,
right,
Angie, how much you give me if I throw up the ROC sign after I finish singing?
Throw
Like, just as a hip hop move.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
people
she
think
was
you're
like- she was
Illuminati
like,
now?
People think I'm Illuminati. Y'all hate us corny with that Illuminati mess. I mean, Illuminati confirmed since 2009. I was just trying to make Angie Martinez
my
laugh.
God.
I swear.
Damn, Ange.
I have not been
Damn.
invited to
Probably
any
laughing
Illuminati
each time,
meetings.
like,
Oh, that is perfect.
good.
Do you feel that there's been improvement on Broadway? We were just talking about Laura's experience there with Shawnee, where they were the only people of color there besides Lauryn Hill. Has Broadway made any strides in that regard?
Well, no, I think it comes in waves. And I think while we're in this moment of talking about white supremacy and systemic racism, it's actually the silver lining is that Broadway is stopped. And now we're really overdue for those conversations. Like, it's messed up that you guys were the only people of color in that audience. It's messed up that, it's so expensive. And so I can speak for Hamilton. I can't speak for the rest of Broadway, but we're having the conversations of how to create greater access while fighting the resale market and like scalpers, like how to get greater access for our communities to see our show, at least, especially in the tour stops and on Broadway, but also how to make the crew backstage as diverse as our cast on stage.
Right.
These are all conversations that are happening and need to happen. But like, it's cyclical. I remember I got, people were so hopeful because Hamilton was so diverse, and I would get so many press questions being like, do you think it will be diverse? And I was like, nope, because I know it takes 7 years to make a show. I know what's coming in the pipeline next year, and like, it's just not as diverse as the year we're in right now. And so, those conversations are happening because the national reckoning is happening.
Well, I just want to let you know that my 5-year-old, we watched Hamilton. I probably should not have shown her Hamilton because of the gun violence. But,
My 5-year-old saw it too.
but she loved the rapping part. She was like, "Oh, Dad, this is fire." Like, she loved all of that. But she also never got over the fact that she's like, "Why is the guy from Mary Poppins in this?" And I was like, "Well, no. See, what happened was he actually, just watch it, man. It's
Well, it's funny because older folks who grew up on Electric Company were like, why is the dude from Electric Company in this?
right." So during the release of Hamilton this past July 3rd on Disney Plus, which a lot of people watched, and congratulations on the resurgence of the soundtrack and everything on Billboard and the music from the movie, etc. There was also a conversation around the complexities of Alexander Hamilton and his buying and gifting of slaves to his family members, which you leaned into. I saw some articles about you actually broaching this conversation on social media. Were you proud about being able to be a part of that learning for people in this moment in history where Hamilton still, as much as he's an amazing figure, and we're grappling with, what role does Thomas Jefferson play, and should his name be on schools, and what statue should be up, and et cetera, and all those things. Your project is a part of this learning.
Yeah, it's a part of the learning, and it's a part of the conversation. Absolutely. And I think that, I was mentioning this to Peter and Laura before you guys walked in, but like, there's nothing further from our show than a monument. Like, my whole thing is that, like, I don't believe we celebrate them. I believe that the thesis of the show is like, the fights we had then are the fights we're still having now.
That's
that
right.
includes complicity in slavery, that includes gun control, as you mentioned, that includes as we're seeing with the pandemic, like the way states are being left to fend for themselves, and when are we 50 states, and when are we one country? Like, all these contradictions were there at the founding, and all of these And so for Hamilton to force us to have those conversations, like these are not gods that get statues. These are people who messed up, and we're all complicit in the practice of slavery in one form or another. There's no character in our show that gets off scot-free.
Well, and I would even say, like, watching it again on television, even it didn't strike me obviously when I first saw it, but now looking at the Thomas Jefferson character of how he shows up, he's like, what did I miss? Hey, I've been kicking it. Like, I've been abroad.
And he's
like,
being carted around by his servants and his slaves. Like,
right.
That's literally the staging. I mean, so it's in there, and it's all in there as much as I could fit into a 2.5-hour musical.
Right.
So yeah, I'm grateful for the conversations, and I'm grateful for the criticisms too, because I know what's not in it too. You know what I mean?
Right.
I know what I didn't fit in or I couldn't fit in. So, it's all fair game.
Last thing
Cancellation is not criticism.
That's
Go
right,
ahead, Laura.
That's right.
Lynn, so I just finished watching the Walter Mercado documentary called Mucho, Mucho, Mucho Amor. And I was trying to explain to Ebro and Rosenberg how humongous Walter Mercado was.
It's so hard to explain to folks.
Right. And my favorite part is that you have an amazing cameo, but it was Lin-Manuel as a fan. And watching you as a fan with your father and meeting him, tell us about that experience.
Well, listen, it actually came as a result of my friend UTK, who's in the Freestyle Love Supreme documentary that's coming out on Friday. He's good friends with the filmmakers, and he hit me with a text that said, do you want to meet Walter Mercado? My friends are doing a doc. And I was like, yes! Because Walter is mythic in every Latino house, whether it's in Latin America, in Puerto Rico, and in like first-generation homes. Like, I remember walking into rooms and my grandmother being like, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up. I was like, oh, Walter's on. She's waiting for Walter to get to her astrological sign to find out what her day is going to be like. And she was Sagittarius and I was Capricorn, and we would sit there and wait for Walter to go, Capricornio. And he was very flamboyant. It was sort of like Liberace meets Donny Osmond, but like with this like authority that just radiated off. You're like, whatever he says is right. And so it's funny. I got to meet him when I was in Puerto Rico last January, and I basically am like the audience surrogate for so many kids who grew up watching Walter Mercado every morning with their abuelos and their abuelas, and I got to tell him all that. Like, I just felt the ancestors so heavy in the room. I was like, my grandmother is doing backflips wherever she is that I'm talking to you. And I got to say that to him, and he passed away at the end of last year, so I was really grateful I got to say that to him.
Lin-Manuel Miranda, man, we are.
He's got to go, Ebro.
Every time I talk to you, I just want to say we're so proud, and you don't need to hear it from us.
Thank you.
But I just want to say, if you don't hear it from New York City enough, and people who have had the pleasure of just knowing you through this whole journey, man, keep going. And it sucks that In the Heights was punted till next year, but I'm looking.
It'll be
forward
awesome when it happens, though.
You're gonna love it. I can't wait for you to see it.
Everyone, this Friday, the documentary, We Are Freestyle Love Supreme.
I'm actually excited about this doc. It sounds amazing.
I'm in. I'm going to watch it with Issa because she's going to be like, wow, the guy from Mary Poppins.
He's still going. The Mary Poppins thing is still happening.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks, Lynn.
All right.
Thank you,
Thanks, guys.
Lynn.
Appreciate
Take care, man.
Appreciate you, bro.
Thanks.
Bye.